Good evening, good morning, and good night, I guess, wherever you are in the world. My name's Joshua Shigala. Welcome down the rabbit hole once again. Today, I'm got the great guest, a fantastic guest, someone that really understands the macros of the markets as well as the minutia that is the crypto markets and the tiny little bits of detail in this very, very fast evolving space. Francis Hunt of the Market Sniper joins us today. How are you, Francis?
Great to be with you. Very glad for the invite.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure. And I'm just wondering how do you feel? You know, we've got so much happening in the globe right now. We have, of course, the war in Ukraine. We have a whole bunch of macroeconomic details starting to. The screws are starting to tighten up worldwide. Of course, the fallout of the whole COVID nonsense as well, and how that whole thing plays in, especially the stimmy checks and everything that happened throughout that time, is all coming home to roost. How do you see the zeitgeist of where we're at right now?
It's a seminal moment, Joshua. Normally, summer season is actually known for being benign and dull and people sitting around actually waiting for things to happen. And right now, a lot of things are actually setting up to happen. And you normally get significant new direction on moves once the bankers are back at their desks on things like gold and silver, traditional markets particularly, but also crypto has lent a little bit on that as it's become more institutionalized as well. Sort of tail end of August going into September. Actually now, things have got disorderly and out of hand that you're not going to get the dull second half of summer that many people are expecting. There's going to be real events. And in fact, it's already started with the dollar selling off substantially on the dollar index. So the Dixie's collapsed from around 103. So we tend to do a live trading day on the non-farm payrolls number. That was 2 weeks ago Friday. It's like tomorrow's Friday, I think it is. So 2 weeks ago from tomorrow. And the economic data has gone like this. Powell didn't increase this time after doing 4 0.75s. So everybody's calling peak cycle on the rates. Inflation battle won. The inflation numbers came in lower at 3 when there was expectations of it being 3.1 or 3.2. Now I'll comment on that in a minute. So an undershoot on inflation. And then you've also had an undershoot on core retail expenditure, both on general retail and on core, which is the things you've got to buy. So people spending less. So everything pointing to a marked slowdown. And then the actual payrolls number itself was, after 14 in a row beats of expectation, was an undershoot. So all of those things point in one direction. We can't hide the fact that things are slowing the hell down to an immense degree. The retail consumer is crushed. You then add commercial property markets, particularly places like New York, San Francisco. You've got all sorts of problems going down. And contractions. Now, last night, you had the tech guys reporting Tesla showed major margin contraction because they've been having to discount to keep their cars going out. You've got a subprime cars crisis going on. And you also had the Verizon, a huge miss. Our community was short in that. And you had Netflix also not making its revenue expectation number. So the whole growth model all looking a little bit frayed. So what you actually got, the fact is that we're in hyperstagflation, which was the phrase I used last time. You're actually in a recession. You have been for a long time, from when we met the criteria initially. They said, no, not this time because labor market's strong. And they now addendumed a sort of weasel clause. A recession was very simply defined, 2 quarters of negative growth. But they then said, no, we're not really, as if it's something vague. Once you've defined 1 + 1 = 2, if you get 1 + 1, you have to say it's 2. But they go, no, not when you do this kind of maths on Thursdays when it's that kind of moon. And that's kind of what they did. So the truth of the matter is we're contracting on one hand, but at the same time, whilst the narrative is inflation is going down, that 3% was compared to a year ago when it was 9%. So you get what's called basing effects. if I'm benchmarking my 100-meter sprint to Usain Bolt's 100-meter sprint, you can be sure that the times have not improved and that are coming, the performance is coming down. But if I'm comparing themselves to myself when I was a 5-year-old, then I'm performing brilliantly. So the point is the basing effect.
It is extremely Orwellian how they tend to change the idea of what inflation is, what a recession is, and just change the meaning, change the word, and then say no, we're not because X. They sort of did the same thing with vaccines as well.
History is being live rewritten all the time, and the best way to do that is to remove all basis of comparison when you're involving statistics. So you change the format, you change what's in the basket, even the statistics, BLS, the statistics RLI, you put more tech goods that are deflating. You manipulate, you get lies and statistics, basically.
I've heard them state that because maybe televisions, you're getting more features like 4K and such. So they're saying, well, that's more valuable now because you're getting internet connected TV instead of a standard. So they absolutely manipulate the numbers. I mean, we all know this. They do it in Venezuela. They do it everywhere. There's the official inflation rate and then what the guy on the street tells you. And I can absolutely tell you that the US inflation, especially from friends that are over there, people are noticing it massively. In terms of of course, the energy crisis over in Europe is causing the feeling of massive inflation on top, because food, everything else is going up. There's a whole lot of bakers that are closed down near me because they just can't afford to fire up the ovens anymore. It's quite intense. And so we are in this stage. But, one thing that I find fascinating is that all the people in the crypto space are like, we're going up. It's starting to hit the moon. While I understand that, because Bitcoin, coming from the gold space, Bitcoin is definitely that hedge against inflation. But at the same time, other hedges like property, which are also highly manipulated with, all sorts of tax incentives and everything, is going globally. We're seeing a downtrend because the interest rates are rising, and so this is something that
anything that has financial engineering injected to it, where you have the controlled demolition nanothermite of interest rate exposure, which is the financialization of everything agenda that we face, is going to face actually deflation, because the affordability is going down. People don't actually buy a top ticket price. They buy what they can afford monthly to pay. And in the US, it's famous for people not even knowing the price of the car, just knowing their monthly payment and how much of it they're servicing. So hence you get all these shotgun financial agreements where it runs for 7 years and you buy 50% of the vehicle, and then you own a balloon payment, which will approximately reflect the depreciation in its value, and you give the car back as your balloon payment and sign up for another shotgun deal where you can be rate bursary again. That is the vehicle. So one of my fulcrum reset sniper pieces of advice is get the nanothermite out of your personal financial structure, and that is interest rate exposure. Anybody with debt is sitting with interest rate exposure. And that's why the asset class of property will have to deflate as those sort of things happen. But the irony is it's a hyperstagflation. So while I'm talking about all the things that are contracting will go down, also, however, there's a lot of hot money that's been proliferated that needs to be parked somewhere. That's why you're seeing a very strong stretchy valuation equity market, because the dollar's devaluing. So the bond market rates were going too high. The interest rate payment in the States now is well beyond that which is spent even on the military industrial complex, the defense budget. So your interest payments is higher than that, and you're only paying in arrears. So you're starting to get the high interest rates that were applicable a year ago, only now you've further increased them, and those are just going to be coming thick and fast and getting ever higher because the rates continued to go up by 0.75%. That was part of the medicine that you had to take for killing it. You're now hitting into the long slab of that. So government, this is why the dollar is going down, because they went from about an 80 billion deficit to almost a 300 billion deficit. Why is that? Well, because you're sitting in an environment where your revenues from tax have plummeted. So people are earning less and paying less tax. And at the same time, you've had to expend more and pay more on interest. So your bills have gone up at the same time as your income has gone down. And you already were spending more than you were supposed to. So you're already excess spending by 80 billion. Well, how do you cover that? That's all new debt issuances. It goes on the credit card. So the problem you have is interest rates on debt. The rate of the creation of debt is so high that something cannot be valuable if it's proliferated everywhere and coming thicker and faster. It's like me bringing, the stealing stuffing and dropping it off in your house, and I keep bringing it, and you put it all in your ceiling, and I keep bringing this aerolite stuff, and it's now in your fridge in your kitchen, and I say it's worth $1 million a meter, and I keep bringing it. You now can't move in your house. You can't even open your front door. There's just this stuffing everywhere, and I say you're surrounded with all this high value, stuff, and you say, can you please just take some of it away? I don't want it. I don't care what it's worth. I'll pay you to take it away.
And for the folks that don't know, this is what inflation looks like. This is how new money is created through debt, through mortgages, through business
borrowed into existence. Yeah,
borrowed into existence. And this is why every time, and Milton Friedman talked about it, many economists talked about it. Every time there's high inflation, well, what do you see? Of course, you see interest rates go up as they try to use that single lever that they have to manipulate. I mean, of course, you have tariffs and some other things, but generally it's that one lever to control the entire economy, which is why such economists like the Austrians are not for this sort of thing, but rather for more of a free market rather than a centralized planned economy, which some would say it isn't in the West, but some would argue it is, because you do only have that central lever, the price of money. Where do you see now, like in terms of people wanting to diversify out, maybe they're heavy into crypto, or maybe they're heavy into the legacy world, where would you say a good portfolio split is during a time like this, where you do see, you mentioned to get out of interest-bearing debts, where do you see a good portfolio split during these sorts of times?
So you need the digital and the non-digital. You need a combination of both. It's very foolhardy to be all in one. I've heard certain moon channels talk about my wealth is 99% crypto. It's pretty silly. It's far better to have a number of physical things that are unlevered. The difference about owning a gold ounce, and I had it out, beautiful milleted 100-ounce bars and little bits. I have them bolted, but I keep one sample with me, and I had it out. Yes, it's real. There's no debt associated with that. You paid it, you own it, and there's no debt associated with it at all. And it means basically that you have an asset without a corresponding liability. I would say people should still have some cash for emergencies in terms of bank outages and bank downs, because essentially the problem with hyperstagflation is when you have inflationary forces and you have deflationary forces. Technology has typically been a deflationary force. You do more things more efficiently, more whatever. So it's a bit like you have a 3-year-old daughter and you're walking through the park with your wife, and the child is hanging on your one finger and on your wife's one finger, and you're kind of pulling her along and lifting her off the ground, and it's wee, and she's holding on. And you're counterbalancing. You're both pulling her to your side, and that pulls on her arms a little bit, and she can jump up and float for a while. And in essence, you could be representative of disinflation because you're the technology side, and the wife can be the consumer, getting the goods and buying the food and the core retail, and she could be pushing the inflation side. But everything is pretty balanced because you have these counter forces. Hyperstagflation is I replace you with an 18-wheeler bulldozer who's going to have the hand of the child chained to its rear axle, and then I get a combine harvester where the wife was, because, you know, that's the food side and the core, and I have them pull in opposite directions. People say, well, there's still balance. What they're trying to do is create such recessional forces to countervail the hyper levels of inflationary forces that have been released. And it's a much more precarious balancing act. You can say, well, they've got roughly the same power, you know, the combine harvester and the, you know, the bulldozer, but and therefore we're in balance. But the problem is, if one just misses a beat and you get off the power on one, it pulls everything violently to one side. And of course, the child itself doesn't want its arms pulled out of its sockets. So the pressure and the forces and the need for balance are far, far higher. You're now 10,000 leagues under the ocean. Every mistake you make that goes wrong sees things collapse. You know, a la the submersible recently. So the point is, it's gone from being a pretty benign situation that was balanced to supposedly a balanced situation, because you're getting, they're countervailing the fact that there's inflation by destroying everybody's wealth. Let's put it that way. The proliferation, divide anything by M2, net income is going down, divide by M2. Labor participation, all of these things point that this has been a wealth destroying area since 2000, almost .com, but certainly from subprime. So, and this is accelerating now because the debt curve is now in a parabola. So debt is worthless. Bond market money is worthless. By definition, the digitalized fiat creation in the computer is essentially worthless, and that point of reset is coming sooner. So
and I think they've overstretched the money printer at the start. Now they're heaving interest rates, which is going to absolutely massacre people that took advantage of cheap money and got hugely in debt, and caused this inflation. And now they're going to basically, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to lower interest rates again because, wow, everyone's going broke. We've got to stimulate the economy. And this is this cycle that happens all the way down to the bottom. And, you know, one of the things—
But it's also important to say it doesn't help you. These things, it's a bit like war. These things, all that money that gets created isn't actually being given in any great, outside of the stimmy checks, which were actually quite a small percentage of the money created. Most of it is going to banks. What most people don't realize is that the events of March 2020 was a much bigger bank bailout than the subprime crisis. There was right. 23 trillion sent to banks, but you take the dilution on that, and you lose the buying power on that, and then they send you a $500 check 3 or 4 times.
It was a very, very sneaky move, and even the stimmy checks themselves, if you straight away went to the bank, if you had any debt on your account, the stimmy check automatically paid down that debt, and you got what was left over, which most people didn't have anything left over. So actually it was a bailout for the bank while saying that it was a bailout for the people. And it really wasn't. So this is why we didn't see a banking collapse yet, because they all feasted during that time on fresh.
And it's exactly the same as war. It's an opportunity to do population culling, corruption, feed the controlled industries like the military industrial complex, and these bank bailout, these events of stimulus be seen. You know, there's a great narrative. I'll tell you about the real history of Robin Hood. You're sold this hero that's robbed from the rich and gave to the poor, when in actual fact, when you understand the full history of the story, he was working in conjunction with the then king. He was stealing from the middle class, and then he would make very small, high profile, minuscule payments to poor as a PR exercise to win his name as a hero, and was actually splitting the wealth stolen with the king, who treated him as a fake enemy and said, we got to catch him, we got to catch him. And the whole people were. This is the true narrative behind Robin Hood. So it was, and King James, and actually most presidents, I think there's only one president that's not related to that then king. And it was the original establishment of false flag and terrorists. Essentially, I create a terrorist, I control. And they've been repeating this narrative with ISIS and all of these things multiple times. I create a terrorist, I control. And he steals from you, and I make, that's terrible, I'm going to catch him. I'm sorry you got stolen from. Meanwhile, he's coming around the back door, and I'm sharing the spoils. And then, in the rare moments he's seen giving a penny to a drunk or a hobo, and this, and I have stolen from the rich and I'm giving to the poor. And it's in a small fractal. And it's very similar to the Clinton foundations that have donated less than 1% of any of their money to altruistic people, and largely have served as wealth funds for families. So this is a well-known orchestrated strategy. We are in peak perversion and peak corruption. And this whole reset of financial system is another way that dishonest powers that are in charge, the robber barons of the world, because that's what Robin Hood and his merry men, and there was actually quite a lot of merry men and Little John, there's quite a lot about gender and their inclinations as well when you read into the true analysis of these narratives. But let's park that one for a minute. But the whole inversion, perversion, and corruption is the priestly classes stripping out the masses who are taught to be moral and honest while they practice the exact corollary, the opposite. And
I like to call them the philanthropath. It's a philanthropath, is a psychopath masquerading as a philanthropist.
No, that's a very good phrase. I like it, and I'm going to steal it. The whole notion. Whenever I see that billionaire and philanthropist, I just know robber baron. And this is invariably it. So what you need to do, we've just had an amazing, I'm completely dispassionate now on crypto. I've always said it's captured. There's a lot of narrative. I'm telling you, we're probably not 2 years away from BlackRock and Vanguard to some degree having some custodial control over the mystery man who disappeared, the Bitcoin origin wallet. I'm pretty sure at some point they'll bring that into base, and it'll be ward of care of these great organizations. Whenever I see him speak, he made a recent speech, and everybody is like, "Oh, Moon for Bitcoin, this is great." What he actually is saying is, this is great news because this is internationalizing money, and we will have decentralized, although he's not really serious about that, and I'll break down, with identified beneficial owners at every level. So what he's actually saying is we're going to have global world money, because he says it extends beyond the boundaries of countries. So he's saying, I'm anti the politicians, making out. Meanwhile, he's an uber politician.
By the way, folks at home, you're talking about Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock.
Larry Fink of BlackRock, correct, yeah. And what he's also saying is a forced system that forces you to be KYC'd and identified, that sets up the later option for instant tax extraction against your name, what was income, first this, all viewable. So government agencies across the world that decide that you're one of their slaves and you belong to that plantation can then make submissions. There's permanent record on what date, what time, all of this. So the beneficial owners identified, you've got to remember they want to own everything. So once they control the issuance of tokenomics, they can then buy you out of everything. And one of their key tricks is also the establishment of derivatives. Now, people think of derivatives as those crazy things just with Greeks. Sometimes you just have to understand. Clay tablet was a derivative of gold deposit. It was done thousands of years BC, thousands of years. And then clay tablets saying you had a certain amount of gold were swapped. And, there was bark off certain trees in China, and there was all forms. These are an establishment of a proxy for your actual real asset, which used to be gold and silver. In fact, silver was money before gold. There wasn't enough of gold around. And what's ended up happening is they want to separate you from your actual physical assets, your home, your bike, your car, your everything. What they actually want to do is establish NFTs and tokenomics on everything you own, which then creates a digitized derivative proxy that they can then purchase, that then implies a physical event ownership that they can subsequently come and take it away from you. Or you can continue using it on a rental agreement. And they turn you into tenants in your own home, renters of your own bike by use, etc., because they own it.
And we can see part of this shift in the software space. It used to be where you buy Photoshop and maybe 2 years later you buy another copy.
Correct.
Upgrade.
But the stock market rewarded renewal and recurring income, subscription income over payments. So you're able to buy Word and Excel. Now you rent it in the cloud. The cloud was always part of this agenda. You sharing all your stuff with them, and you getting a space where you rent things and you no longer own them, and them getting an opportunity to surveil, copy, voice track, ID scan, biometric data scan, doctor's appointments, search your mails, everything. Cloud was somebody else's computer.
Now, I just want to add here.
Amazon.
I just want to add here that Klaus Schwab's, you will own nothing and be happy, in one way is very, very right, but not the way that he means it. You do really want to start a company and have it own everything away from you as a person. And this is basically trying to get the best you can out of life, and not to to optimize your tax structure is generally what everybody does, is to try and get a company to. So in one way he's correct, but not in the way he thinks, because he's thinking in the way you are thinking, you're explaining, which is basically make you a slave, make you rent everything. No. The true way of owning nothing and being happy is having an entity own everything for you on your behalf, and you being an employee of that, but you own that company at the end of the day. I think this is a really important
foundation. I mean, we have foundations are even more specific for protection on that. And in fact, where we do them after 2 years, they can't be pried open. They use these tools as well. So you have to recognize you've got to use the tools they use to protect themselves, to buy them their own exorbitant privileges. But corporations are certainly better than in your own personal name. And everything is going to be forced into tokenomics, and you're going to have to make a decision. And you want to own black assets. I'm pretty sure your assets will be started to be referred to as black assets if you don't agree to put them on. So Vitalik of Ethereum fame collaborated with the Zionist professor on having everybody's properties registered on the blockchain. They're going to tell you how quick and efficient conveyancing is now going to become, or everything's going to become so much more convenient, safer, perfect record, all the baloney sales pitch. But what that actually means is they will then slip in a rule that will say, oh, you have to declare the value and you will pay property taxes, because everybody now is so poor after this changing fiat system, and everybody angry and upset, and you're rich still, and you got to pay fair tax because you own a property. What's the valuation? And they can do a forced purchase if they think you're undervaluing it, or they can do a forced purchase. So this whole Ashkenazi concept of you shouldn't be an owner perpetually, you should be able to put a price to everything. They can do forced sales on you as part and parcel of that once your property is going to be blockchain registered. And that is part of their plan. And they can just drum up the tokens for nothing at a computer exercise and turn you into a tenant of this and say, well, you've been paid in XYZ tokens, which of course they'll inflate away in much the same scam ways that they do. So do not get separated by proxies, derivatives, NFTs, blockchain, anything else that are supposed avatars for the actual asset. As they force you digital, you should be going physical. You need to do the opposite of what they are doing. Are we trading? We traded XRP before the news. We got it. I didn't even know news was actually coming. I wasn't following the court case. We took a 70% overnight major run with leverage, and we've been invested in it for a while. I'm going to keep doing that. So I'm not participating in the digital game. We're long Lumen as well at the moment. We're expecting another surge there. I'm in and part of it. We're building wealth in reset times. That needs conversion into physical assets that you can use, store, and that will be kept dark when they then force everybody to state their net worth and register all their assets. And everybody says, oh, they won't confiscate gold. The first thing they do is send a man with a clipboard to get you to declare what you have. Then they say register it, and then slowly they tighten the news. Then they say put it on the blockchain. Here's your related token, where's it vaulted, who's your custodian, etc., etc. And then
Also
they buy you out.
They'll demonize you and say that you're a financial terrorist because the economy is so bad and it's your fault because you've got physical assets. This is the same sort of thing that they did during the whole scamdemic, is to blame everybody that wasn't jabbed or stabbed for the whole pandemic. And really, it was everyone knew it came out that the thing didn't even stop the spread. So by blaming you for the whole thing, they can really control you. And I absolutely agree, Francis, that this is a typical modus operandi of the elite or a power structure. One of the last things, I know you're a busy man, so I don't want to keep you all the time, but this is really important information. We're working on the standard. For those that don't know what we're doing, we're allowing people to lock up digital assets in a smart contract and borrow money against themselves at 0% interest. Now, 0% interest loans is effectively how the elite have enabled, or fixed interest at least, have survived through hyperinflation in the past. They would get one property, borrow against it, and go to their bank and say, "Look, Mr. Bankman, I'm a very wealthy individual. I want different terms. I want terms like you will lock in this interest and you will not readjust my loan for inflation post any sort of dramatic inflationary data." And so this is effectively what we allow to do through DeFi now. And I think it's a really good tool. And I think what you were stating before about saying, look, the important thing is not to use, the important thing is to use these digital tools to gain, because we are going to see, and we're still seeing, the largest transfer of wealth that, well, we will probably see in generations. But we need to use these tools and then diversify out into physical, whether that's forestry, pork bellies, gold, property. I think you are spot on there, Francis. A really, really enlightening conversation.
Yep, and we specialize in wealth building. As I say, our guys have had an amazing week and month. We've got some fabulous charts. We're looking at a 70x token, mystery token that people can come and find out more if they want at our website, themarketsniper.com. We've got some excellent trades even in the traditional markets that we expect to do very well. And these are things that have to happen because of the corner these control structures painted itself into. In terms of currency devaluations, how and when to trade the metal markets, because you've got to get your timing right if you're using a little bit of leverage, but we do it very moderately. But we specialize in wealth building for these times, which are reset end of era times. And that's what you're going to be living through, case study of economic history. And that's our specialty, and protecting that. Too many people in crypto go for the round trip. We have the point at which you take off. And that is the value of targeting in the Hunt Volatility Funnel method. We took our leverage off at 78 cents on XRP. We've watched it come back down to the 50s and 60s. We've gathered back up slowly. We use those profits to reinvest. And now we're getting ready for our next leverage trade. And we've got the next target in mind. People can, if they want to, participate in those moves. And it's totally statist. It's not to be loved. It's not to be praised. It is just what it is, and there will be other tokens that will be doing similarly, and we will roll our way through this bull market. We will maximize, and we will save people from the round tripper experience, where they have a virtual wealth that spikes, only to watch it slip like sand through their fingers, and they often end up lower than they were before, or only with 20% of what they once had at their high water mark. And that's the key for most retail guys' experience. And they have to convert some of that into physical things that will be very useful for exactly what's going to be coming their way in this grand adventure we're going on.
Yeah. Francis, thank you very, very much. I agree. If anybody wants to stay in touch with what you're doing, where's the best way to reach out to you, mate?
The two YouTube channels, The Crypto Sniper and The Market Sniper for the traditional markets, and the same names on Twitter, where we also fairly active on the FinTwit area. And then the website by the same name, themarketsniper.com. If you feel ready to book a call, costs nothing. There's no obligation. There's no hard sales at all. It's existing members that you'll speak to.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for those that want to know what we're doing, we're about to launch our MVP on mainnet in Arbitrum. It's looking so amazing. I'm really happy with it, and it's fun to try it out. When we go live with our MVP, it'll be a closed beta launch. So come and test some testnet coins. It's going to be great. Be able to borrow against yourself. Be your own bank. This is what we're saying. We'll obviously leave all the links to Francis down below and to the standard.io. Come and join us, folks. Keep staying down that rabbit hole. It's an exciting world, and it's really an amazing time to be alive with everything's coming together. AI, the crazy markets, everything's happening at once right now. It's absolutely fascinating, and I'm glad I'm around at this time. Thank you very much, Francis, and I'll see you around the traps.
Absolute pleasure. Bye for now.
Bye.